Well, we were just trying to get things sorted. There's a little bit of a language barrier, and it's the first time the racer has used race time, so it just took a little bit of ironing out. We're going to hopefully get this rolling here in a second, so I'm going to transition over, and we're going to get this kicked off for everybody. All right, it appears everyone's ready, so hopefully we get this. I didn't bother with the part about syncing up everyone basically because I know there's a language barrier and I'm not going to go through the extra steps of getting the person to bring up the global timer and stuff like that. So we're going to roll with some on the fly sync. I'll do what I can to get our racers good to go once the race has kicked off. Excellent. And it looks like they're actually synced almost within a second anyways, so that's fine.
Yeah, cool. Just need the off stream if you don't mind, sir.
Yes, definitely. We are past the scary point, and yes, as Minnie is mentioning in chat, thank you Google Translate. You totally saved my butt on that one. All right, this should be coming to you now. All right, but good luck to our runners. Super excited for this. Michia actually PB'd just before the race, so this should be intense. They got a 57-1X. I think it was a 13, something like that, 12-13. But yeah, this is gonna be another round 2 race. Big K moved on from round 1. Michia got the bye, being our 3rd seed of the tournament. Both of them have been PBing recently, so definitely some momentum at play here.
Indeed, that's going to make it's going to make things a little interesting when it comes to this competition, this race. So we're into it. We're in chapter 1 already. As we fly by, I was going to mention this game is a game of 2 halves. I'll pretty much be around at least for the first half tries. Obviously, because of delays, I may have to drop out mid-race. I do apologise in advance, but I thought I'd better mention it now.
Hey, that's totally fine.
I can think about it. But yeah, so the front half is essentially technical platforming incarnate. Starts off, well, simple for Cyber Shadow standards, but it will get progressively more intricate as we go. Involving a number of things, tank damaging being a good essence of it, using that knockback, a bit of a trope from old school gaming with the old knockback techniques and cycle-based things, and all the works are like that. So it's going to be relatively simple in that standard as we go forward at first. But in the meantime, yeah, should be okay for our runners, keeping on top of everything so far, just meeting the initial cycle there in this, well, should we say Castlevania-inspired clock tower. As we approach our mid-boss for stage 1, the Smasher. Smasher does exactly what it says on tin. Eat smash. You stay, if you're under that pillar when he smash, you dead. And you pretty much need to stay in close. Just keep the damage up. Ideally, you'll have it down in 2. A nice quick 2 for Messi here. So he had a pretty solid round fight there, and not far behind with the big K. So we're off to a good start on both ends. And speaking of cycles, what do you make of this one, Strother?
This one is daunting because there's a few things at play here. You can do some ledge grabs, you can do some funky deboosts off of these lasers to save a little bit of time, and you're basically trying to hit 2 cycles. There's no guarantee if you make the first that you make the second, so you can get part way along here and still screw the pooch, basically. Looking pretty comfy right now. Yeah, very comfy in this cycle here. That's basically optimal. That's the best that you can do those platforms any way that you slice it. Any little time losses or time saves before that point essentially all shake out to nothing as long as you make that cycle. This one's a little more tricky, but I like the execution on that. It's the first time I've seen like the short hop onto the taller part of the box and then the jump from there to get the deboost, but that was very nicely done. Big K struggling a little bit. That one is really tough. Going under, which do not blame him.
Indeed, and yeah, the method that Messi used for that top lift group, to be honest, I'd probably say it's probably the more recommended one, even though most people don't use it. I mean, most people may not have necessarily seen it, but I've seen it not long ago, and I thought, you know what, that makes sense. It's a nice, clever way of approach, and Messi pretty much killing stage 1 believe he pretty much hit everything that you can within the stage, so he's going to take an advantage going into the apparator here. So apparator, you pretty much want to get in close to at least avoid the first projectile, keep your damage going up front. As long as you follow through and you score every strike, you should have him down pretty much on his rising jump, and Messier pretty much gets that in what we know as a one-rounder. So pretty much a spot-on stage for Messier, kicking off his campaign pretty damn strong. BigK looking to follow suit with apparator right now. Looking pretty good. Couple of strikes later, just one short, clips the toenails, no problem. So great start on both sides.
You really can't ask for much more out of that fight. Nobody's really going to successfully get him down before the jump. What you don't want to see is the struggle after the jump. Hitting that toe can sometimes be a little bit of a struggle, and you can lose quite a few seconds. But both of our runners really coming out equal, so the difference that we're seeing right now just shakes out to the platform cycles that we were referring to in the first stage. Stage 2 is trash.
You're not wrong there. Literally filled with trash all over the place. I believe both runners opt to get the FP upgrade at this point of the run. Most runners will usually get at least the 1 SP. There's a few that will stick with just 5. In general, the extra XP doesn't necessarily save time, but it doesn't cost. It only costs like 6 seconds, and it just gives you that little bit of extra cushion security to be able to maintain. So you probably could live with a more consistent dealership of your SP by having that extra 1. So it's definitely a wise decision to call as we go with Bug Room. Messier just making it look like it's nothing, because of course he is. That Bug Room can be a bit of a pain. It has a little bit of randomness to the big bug itself. Could take anywhere from 3 to 5 strikes. How many strikes it is? Well, game decides. BigK dealing with his version of it now. And yeah, that's the big danger of that aspect. Because the more you're hitting his pot to break him out, he likes to spew out a lot of tiny little rust flies, and they are an absolute annoyance, to simply put it.
I really, it bugs me personally that we don't understand what determines that bug's health. I want to know. It's in me to want to know.
I'm just going to believe that you did not pun. Well, at least I hope so. At least not intentionally. You've got Laser Brain going on here, and this is, using some of the essence, which is this game's version's currency, to pick up Blade Extend. It just extends your blade just a little more, but when it comes to this boss fight, it gives you pretty much optimally you can get an additional strike. You can also get more strikes into its weak point, one of the only bosses that actually has a weak point in the center core of the Laser Brain. And yeah, so that pretty much just deals heavy damage, and it goes down pretty quickly if you can catch all the strikes in there. But it is a bit finicky because you do have to constantly jump right at the edge of a crate, which can be a little awkward on the movement side. But both runners getting through without too much hassle. Messier just now having his little rest break with the elevator.
Yeah, it's really easy kind of to lose your momentum on the Laser Brain fight, whether it be just a stray jump that you don't land back on the trash pile and you need to reorient yourself, whether you're not getting far enough out to get those slashes on the core and get that extra damage. It's for a fight where you literally just jump off a single block of trash and slash, it's surprisingly intricate.
Indeed, it's a case of just doing the same thing over and over, but sometimes that can get can be a little awkward when you try and do it 8 times in a row.
Especially with the shot timing. Depending on how you're timing out those jumps, the shots from the main cannon when the turrets come out can basically destroy the trash underneath your feet, so...
There is that risk factor, but it's a weird thing with the fight. For whatever reason, if you happen to at least get the first 5 or 6 without any real issue, you dealt enough damage to the point that Laser Brain just doesn't know what to do, and he just gives up, basically.
Yeah, that was a fairly recent discovery.
That was just something that just happened. It was like, oh, he's not fighting. All right, well, that saves me a job. But yeah. It is what it is. We ain't arguing.
Now upcoming is the trashiest of the trash rooms.
Exactly. You need to rise upon your trash to even get out of here. So the entire room is essentially getting through it at a certain pace to meet this specific trash elevator. to meet the best cycle you can. Usually costs about 3 to 4 seconds, I'd say, roughly, any cycle that you miss. But, yeah, no, pretty much getting through the room there, pretty much no problem. Onto the old scrambler. Pretty much staying close. As long as you're staying close, you're going to get the exact same pattern every single time. In that way, you could easily manipulate the fight to your liking.
Anyone else get nostalgic about the carnival every time you say the word scrambler? Just a little bit? No?
Well, I'm a fat boy, so I just get hungry.
I mean, that's a good part of the fair, too. It doesn't have to be about the rides.
Fair point.
Alright, Rising Fire. It rises and it destroys things quickly, as per the game's own description.
Just prevented my mind from being a bit too rude there for a second. Anyway, on to Chapter 3. Chapter 3 pretty much, it brings more of what runners have already experienced within Chapters 1 and 2, but it feels more like a combination, especially from the speedrun side of things. So a number of speed tech that you use, keeping on the cycles, tank damage and methodology, and also something we haven't really touched upon, were known as ledge grabs. Ledge grabbing, essentially, as long as you jump up and you look like you're just under it, but if you turn at the right moment, the game just happens to grab onto the ledge. And the game does get run in one of two variants, either the 60 Hz or 60 FPS or 144. It will only work on 60. You try and do it on 144, it just won't happen. Too many frames. But you get a faster sword at least. So it's a case of runner's preference in that circumstance. There are a few runners that do prefer to run on the 144 variant. But as long as it's executed well, that's the kind of thing that pretty much everything's going to come into play, just to test, just to make sure that you've got all the stuff ready for what comes afterwards.
Yeah, this is really like I've lost count at this point of how many ledge grabs there are in 3 at this point, but it blew up fast. It was this idea of like, oh look, we could do this like here and here, and now all of a sudden there's like more than half a dozen.
Exactly that. There are one or two that I personally wouldn't recommend, simply because it's the time save is very minor in comparison to a second or so. It's more like a quarter second, maybe half a second, and you run the risk of, if you miss it, because both of them are pretty tight windows, it could cost you a good second or so. And in one particular part, it could mess up some enemy patterning and cycling if you go for. But there's at least, as you say, there's at least a good 4, maybe 5 that are more commonly used and used for per the route. But there are even more that some runners will go for to get that extra time save, and some may consider otherwise. So yeah, as you say, this chapter pretty much is kind of chocked with the old ledge grabbing technique.
We had a death there. Cita's side, unfortunately, just too many damage boosts. There was a couple that were unintentional and got hung up on one of the little enemies that pop out of the pits there, and took a couple extra damage boosts off of one of those. So TheBigK1 basically right back on their heels.
And that's the thing that can just happen with Cyber Shadow. This run in general is a very difficult one, as it does throw Hobbitgen back to the games of the 80s and 90s of difficult style. Or what's known for its difficulty, as in the light of like your Ninja Gaidens, maybe even your Ghosts and Goblins, if you want to have bad nightmares about that one. So it's something that just is a part of the run, that we accept as a part of it. You could tell you're going to die at some point. It hurts. But we have the old mecha tank dealing with now, where deal with the core on the top. That'll give access to its main innards, and then you just go crazy. One of the methods we generally use here is pretty much just hop up, strike, deal what you can. May even hit the turrets on the ground. It puts them back into the ground and prevents having to worry about their bullet spreads going absolutely crazy. Both getting through without much hassle. So we get to carry on. I'll be across. Oh, can't go for. Unfortunately, BigK having to skip out of that ledge grab. This is one of the more common ones that we use. But a bit of RNG there. The enemy decided to fire in that line. So unfortunately, not much you can do about that. Messia going for the old snipe, and that's as good as it gets. So getting that snipe, even though it's not necessarily essential, just makes life a lot more comfortable and lines up the next enemy, as you saw there, to just be able to jump up, throw another shuriken, and it pops a knife. If you miss the initial, trying to throw that next shuriken, it just ends up being just a little too high, and you won't be able to catch him.
Yeah, honestly, those shurikens that we see BigK doing right there,
oh,
they are so precise. Like, it's going to be similar to what we're going to see in the next chapter, kind of with some switches. But it has to be right at the peak of your jump to really get that. Or in the first one's case, not even the peak of your jump. The first one you have to get under the ledge, but also high enough to hit the enemy. Second one has to be kind of at the peak of your jump.
Yeah, and I don't know what BigK did there with the sniping stuff, but it looked like he didn't get the initial snipe, and then he went ahead and proved me wrong by killing the second one with a shuriken. So, I mean, I'd rather have commentator show up than commentator curse, so it's a good feeling, funny enough. So yeah, getting through very well. Both approaching next stage bosses are going to pick up another item here, the Swag Blade. Pretty much, well, buzzsaw on a string. Can't go wrong. And this boss, the Bite Hunter, likes to spend phase 1 pretty much in the air for the most part. So having that Swag Blade pretty much just enables you to just melt its health away at least, or at least get his health down enough so when he's reached the threshold, he'll go into his secondary phase, and he'll start in the center of the field, use that Swag Blade, plus conjunction with going in close, rising fire, bang, he's out already. You don't even have to worry about him running around the field at that point. So, greatly done on Messia's side, and BigK looking to follow suit, and does so very well on the first phase, looking to manipulate into the second phase, make sure the Swag Blade is going to be where he wants it. And yep, there it is, no problem on his side as well. Both well executed, both well played. And the Swag Blade is not quite done yet, so we get to see a little more of it for a couple of things.
Yeah, as you briefly saw in the second phase there, Rising Fire doing the previously mentioned massive amounts of damage. 3 projectiles from the upward strike, assuming that you have SP. And Biohunter's second phase is just gone, and we're going to see more of that later.
And then just went by there with Messia. May have saw an explosion there, and that's one of the advantages of having the Swag Blade here. You basically destroyed a bomb a little earlier than intended. This is going to save about 3 seconds, maybe 4 seconds, give or take. Because the bomb that he exploded essentially is his exit once he's done with our first dojo section. So, good little time save. Unfortunately, the risk is now you've got a Swag Blade, and there are destructible crates that you want to use to be able to do this climb quicker. So, adds a little bit of extra to the section, having to be able to manipulate the blade in such a way that you will not have to worry about any of the crates. And, well, Messia has no problem. Well done on that front. Essentially, these are just little challenges that the run throws at you at a couple of instances in order to get an upgrade. In this case, this would be in the wall stick, or the wall climb. So, you can now climb walls. Great technique to have, so be able to just fly up a bit later on. Or Swag Blade there, catching BigK out, but gets the back up nicely, and he's going to be out at any moment now himself.
One subtle difference we're looking at right now is that BigK has 3 hits left on that Swag Blade, when Messiah's only got the 1. So going into Chapter 4, we're going to see kind of how long each player is going to be able to carry this. BigK obviously having the opportunity to take it longer and having a little bit of leeway. But first hit, and we're going to see that Swag Blade lost on the left-hand side there. And there it goes. I literally just said it.
Well, we know who's cursing today.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like most runners at this point, if they've got the Swag Blade, would usually only carry it just a little bit beyond this point. But there is no reason to not. Let's say if you want to carry it forward even further, there's nothing stopping you, of course. As I say, in BigK's case, he's got the Swag Blade with multiple hits. Maybe it's more of a safety aspect, or maybe it's just he just dealt with Biohunter so cleanly, which he did, to ensure that he didn't take any damage whatsoever. But usually only keep it just for a little bit longer, because it can be a little bit awkward in getting your way on a number of spots as this chapter goes on. But, you know, can always carry it forward even longer. Maybe we use it for even more speed. Or chaotic destruction. As Chapter 4, well, we say the run gets hard. This is pretty much the point where it really starts to ramp it up to the next level and go into that next gear. So things are going to hit harder. There's more enemies just floating around the field. They can be a bit finicky in how they maneuver. They kind of track your positioning as well a little bit. This area can hurt. And it's got some scary cycle moments in it as well.
Both our players doing really good after they got through the switch rooms. Both of them really just kind of proceeding at a solid pace. TheBigK1 going over that little enemy there. A lot of people don't know that you can stand on those. Oh, the swag blade actually caused the damage there. He was going to downstrike on the, I don't even know what those are called, to be honest. But he was going to downstrike, and the swag blade hit it first, so he basically just downstruck into the invincible enemy.
Indeed, and that's the finicky part of having the swag blade beyond that point. It can disrupt you sometimes. We're dealing with the cyber lock here. There's only a couple of them in the any % run, but it's a nice little cool little section. But as it turns out with the first lock, for whatever reason, you only have, there's 2 switches in the room. You only have to hit the one. And then the door just opens.
Go home, Cyberlock, you're drunk.
Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Both runners keeping up very well. There's only pretty much like a room apart from one another at this moment. Messiah currently holding the front line, but as we saw earlier, if a runner takes a death, it can very well change the tide of the battle. Anything can literally happen in one of these runs. As now Messiah is going to approach. As I mentioned, this area has some scary cycles. This happens to be the main one of them. So he's getting on it no problem so far, he's getting through. So now what makes it scary is a nice little drop down for a very tight gap between spikes and spinny things, and yeah. Executed very well on Messiah's part, so no, very well done there, and Big K looking to follow suit now. And gets the damage boost in, gets the setup, so he's all good. He just needs to get the timing right for the drop. Nicely done. And perfect on both sides.
Yeah, we're not really seeing any changes of pace here. I mean, obviously we're not seeing any lead changes, but I mean, aside from that, you're not really seeing too much difference in the runner's techniques. You know, somebody may gain a second or two here or there, but the other person may take it back in the following room. One thing about Cyber Shadow is, like, yes, there's an optimal way to do a room as you would expect, but in addition to that, there's at least like half a dozen ways that you could do it very similarly, which is almost as fast. So it's kind of a neat run in the fact that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of what strats you want to do and why, and you can really kind of tailor it to your own taste and really kind of go for whatever you're comfortable with, knowing that you're not going to sack a whole bunch of time if you're not going for like the optimal strat.
Yeah, and another good thing with this run, it's pretty much a run of execution. There's really not much spots when it pertains to RNG. Chapter 4, however, does have a couple of RNG elements, and speaking of RNG elements, say hi to the Mecha Dragon. Mecha Dragon pretty much is one of the only RNG fights in the run. His RNG isn't terrible, but compared to the rest of the run, it's very noticeable. So pretty much he's going to jump in on either side. He can jump in on the left and the right. It's pretty much going to be attained up to him. From that point on, you could either jump up from the ground or you can swoop in. Furthermore, these propellers that are in the sky, they're randomized as well, so you cannot guarantee exactly where the position is going to be. So as you see there on Messiah's side, because the platforms wasn't in a favourable spot, he unfortunately was not able to score as much damage as he would like. So he's going to have to take another cycle round on the dragon. He's got a good risk going for the kill here. Gets it nicely, so gets a nice 3-rounder. 3-round is pretty much what we will consider like the average high end. Dragon can go down in 2, but it's not easy. It can be a bit finicky. Plus, the boss does like to, for whatever reason, just eat damage. I can't explain exactly why that is, though. He just eats damage sometimes.
And they have a really, really clean round one. What I've noticed from just even watching a few runs, whether it be on the boards or even just prior to this race practicing, they're very particular in how they do that first cycle. And I regularly see them get the health down below half. So it's really kind of a roll of the dice on the second cycle. They missed the 3 cycle by 1 hit earlier today before the race. So I think that consistent first cycle is something that's really helpful. We'll see how Big K does here with his fight.
gets a healthy amount of damage. Not quite at the halfway mark, but yeah, as you say, the first, at least the first one, there are a number of different ways that different runners take on how they approach each starting. But usually, if executed correctly, it usually does result in around and about half health for the most part. Unfortunately, getting a bit trolled there by the platforms themselves.
Oof. Okay. Salvaged on the third phase there. It was looking a little dicey until those two little platforms came down. But yeah, second phase basically got put out to rest before he even had a chance to do much with it because of just the platform placement and where Mecha decided to spawn. But made the most of that 4 cycle, really all you can expect with that terrible RNG after the first phase.
Well, yeah, you can. I say 4th cycle is definitely still acceptable, especially given the RNG, especially the one that he got in the end. So he ain't going to complain at that, I wouldn't have thought, as he'll deal with the Warriors of Light in the Final Fantasy Crystal room. So JoJo challenge number 2, beat the hell out of a crystal. And just key point to this section, do not, at any circumstances, if you can help it, let the Warriors of Light land. They become a problem then. They like to block a lot. As long as you swipe them in the air, they go down pretty much instantly. And before I have a chance to explain what the hell's going on Messiah's side, boss is dead.
I really like that execution of that fight. I mean, obviously, there's a couple variations of how runners will do it based on whether or not they take the E-Field or the Blaster in. But that's really methodical because it's timing the shots in a way that you use the projectile from the E-Field to kill the last of the 6 circles before the main part spawns. You also use that projectile at the very start to get some initial damage in before the boss defends itself. But then it's kind of this nice nuance where the shield comes back in time to block the first wave of bullets from the boss, and then you can start getting your damage in. For a while there, the standard was we're going to take 2 hits in that fight, and we're going to try and do the skip in this next chapter without taking a single hit. Now we've really realized there's quite a bit of flexibility in that fight, and you can easily do that fight taking no damage or 1 damage. Give yourself at least a little bit of a buffer.
Indeed, and that goes for both bits of equipment with the gun as well. And as you say, pretty much a methodical fight. It's one of them fights that you could essentially do. You could do it the same way every single time, and it will work. I mean, I follow my own specific patterns as well to get that fight down without taking a hit. I mean, things can always go wrong, of course, but it is quite nice. And both of these weapons will produce useful in Chapter 5, dependent on runner's preference. And there is a particular reason why they are actually carrying these forward. So we get to see that in Chapter 5. It's not an easy thing to carry all the way forward, unfortunately. BigK dropping his gun there, taking a few too many hits. So unfortunately, he's not going to be able to take advantage of what we're looking for. But essentially, it depends on which one you want to take. Taking the gun, if you've already purchased it for Mecha Dragon, you have more of an offensive edge going into Chapter 5. However, you're still left open, in a general sense, to the dangers that are ahead. The E-Field, however, because there's a number of enemies within the section that actually fires out projectiles a lot, gives you a much better defensive edge. So, if you're willing to spend the extra finance in order to pick up the E-Field, you'll probably find yourself having a little more of a comfortable time getting through. Oh, got sniped a little bit there, but still had 1 more point on, so we get to see what we wanted to bring this all the way across for. Well, it's for this gate. So instead of going up and around, you save a good 25 seconds just being able to fire through the gate and just, make your way through.
Yeah, and really, we saw the benefit of that damageless fight because taking the 2 hits and having that buffer was nice and comfy. Even with the E-Field, there's nothing stopping you from taking a projectile shot into your back, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was well executed, and unfortunately, BigK is going to be at a loss of about 25 to 30 seconds for having to execute that loop. Was also at a disadvantage with the blaster because he did take a hit on the way to the core fight, so unfortunately didn't have a full 3 life in the sub-weapon to begin with.
Indeed, and it's something that we usually do in that first encounter with Alpha where he got mauled out there. Usually runners would take that intentional damage down to 1 because Alpha will always crunch your health down to 1 before it advances into the next cutscene. But with Messier only having 1 hit point left, there is actually a secondary skip at the end of the stage, so opting to accept a time loss and take a risk here to get a better time save by keeping the equipment. But he's going to have to get through the actual Alpha 1 fight itself. And this fight, probably one of my favourites from an executional standpoint. If executed right, this fight goes down very, very quickly, but it's satisfying to pull off. Opting to, so he's choosing to use the advantage of the E-field instead of going for an all-out pure offensive, choosing to play defensive and take the blocks with the E-field instead of using the parry technique, at least for one of the rounds, to ensure that he keeps it into this next part. So, keeping that in mind, he executed the fight very well, and that'll give him a chance to carry this over to get the secondary skip. And there is one other bonus that the E-field has over the gun, and I can't explain exactly why, but it's basically its range when on its projectile actually has a bit more distance in comparison to the gun. So with both of the skips, it can actually fire off and hit the switch off screen, whereas the gun it cannot. So for that advantage, at least for this one, is that as long as you take it past this room, you can actually open up the gate before you take on the boss stage of Alpha Round 2. With the gun, you'd have to take the gun into the fight and get past the fight before you can actually make the skip itself. And there's the fire off, so that should open up the gate ready. So if he does happen to get hit in this fight, the gate will still remain open and he still will have the benefit of the time save. So nicely done as we go for Alpha 2 here.
I honestly love how that skip has progressed and grown over time, because like it started off very early as like, oh, we could do this, and then, oh, we could do this with a second weapon, and then all of a sudden it's well, what if we carried it a little bit further? Like it's grown into something so much more than just like, oh hey, that's a neat idea, we can maybe skip this one gate. In a game that doesn't have really a ton of skips, and as you mentioned earlier is very, very execution heavy, it's really neat to kind of have that 1 or 2 big avenues for potential difference makers in a race.
Indeed, on that front. And yeah, it gets a bit crazy. I mean, there's something I would like to kind of experiment with a little bit if I ever get the opportunity again, because it happened once during one of my runs where I still had 1 hit on my gun by the time I got second skip, which was lucky as it was, but I happened to carry it all the way to the next stage boss. So there's a bit of work I want to do to see with how much advantage I can actually do that boss with the gun as well. So there could still be more progression of even taking these equipment just that bit further and potentially use it on the next stage boss. So that's the beauty of this game. We're still in its infancy essentially. It's only been around for a couple of months. The run has still time and space to evolve into something even more. God help us. But to complete in stage 5, you get the dash ability, and this is where the second half of the run essentially begins. So the dash has its own SP property as well, or its own little ability of being able to do a charging slash. If we're powered up with an SP, it can go a bit more distance and it won't cut off your running speed after an execution of it. It's also an advantage of if you happen to destroy any enemy or crate involved, you get an SP back in return. So it's nice. It's programmed in such a way that as long as you destroy things with a SP slash, you'll get that SP back. So you can constantly keep your SP up, and that lends itself to being able to speed things up and blast through. It's a nice touch. So chapter 6. One of the main gimmicks here is the security systems. There's these red beams that are all over the place. Now, dependent on the runner, you may see them tripping more switches intentionally than others. And as I say, that's just literally down to the runner and what they wish to do. And so far, so good. We see a trigger in this one off just slightly quicker, but you got a bunch more enemies just to handle as a result of that. In the meantime, BigK getting through with Alpha 2. Nicely on his end, so he'll be getting his dash and we'll be joining into chapter 6 soon.
This is basically the context of that second skip that we were talking about there. This is the whole portion that you skip, because you don't get anything from destroying this capsule with the ninja dude and then dropping down. So it's a nice little time save. It was some very forward-thinking moments, because we kind of initially took the idea of, well, can we open it from the right-hand side and just skip the boss? Because that would be great. Unfortunately, no, but still worthwhile.
got the chapter 6 boss going right now for Mashir, the Tunnel Cleaner. So Tunnel Cleaner is pretty much a parry fight. For most boss fights, if executed correctly, will use the parry to its advantage from the moment we get it at the end of chapter 4. Failed to touch a little bit on that. But parrying projectiles and hitting them straight back into them does heavy damage, and pretty much can make mincemeat of any boss. As you saw there, Messiah just made mincemeat of him with his projectiles, and then using both bombs to hit both bombs in one round, and that just completely destroys him. So pretty much a spot-on fight there from Messiah. So looking good as he enters the Streets of Rage. Meantime, Big K going to take on his chapter 6.
I feel like this is kind of the part of the game that I know I myself had trouble wrapping my head around, and it was because the second I got the dash, my brain immediately went to the place of, you have the double jump, which is definitely not correct, but that's where my brain was apt to go for the first little while, and that's why I find these like mid 2 stages to be a little bit of a it's definitely a mix-up between all of the stages previous and what's to come afterwards, because it's this unique case where you can run, you can dash attack, but don't try and double jump, and your muscle memory is very likely going to try and get you to double jump in future runs or at some point. Or at least that's how it was for me. I don't know about anybody else, but my brain immediately associated the two. We also see some Orbiter on the left-hand side there, which I think Messiah might be the only runner that still uses Orbiter. Mini might have been toying around with it for a little while. I'm not 100% sure he's still doing so. I think that might have been Mini. It was Mini or Magic Man. Somebody with an M.
Messi is the only one I've really ever seen use this, and it's a very viable technique. In fact, it probably would still be worth in the run, to be honest. It just saves a good couple of seconds through this chapter, making just the sewers area, well, gives you better security in the sewer areas. But the time save is mainly with the locked doors that fire out at you. So it's a nice little addition there, and I mean, there's different time saves at different spots, depends on which items you pick up here and where. So it's definitely viable. It's a very nice technique, pretty much making that second door a non-issue, especially when you're on platforms above spikes. It's a very wise decision.
Yeah, if you can spare the 50 essence, like if you know that you're getting to your end game and you've got an extra 50 essence in your pocket, buy it. You're gonna swap it out for that SP dispenser that we're seeing now, but even for the duration, like, take the moment and buy it.
As I speak of the muscle memory, when you're mentioning with the double jump thing, funnily enough, when I started playing this like on the casual, the last ninja type game I played was Messenger, so the first thing I tried to do was slash projectiles. It didn't end well. To be fair. Kind of went a bit awry, but Messiah going through chapter 7 pretty nicely, went out his way a little bit to pick up the SP dispenser, and it's very minor to pick up the SP dispenser, but it's definitely a time save to use it. I mean, pretty much, especially from this point on, having the SP dispenser is a very valuable tool. It replenishes your SP slightly over time, but because you have the ability of being able to do charging dashes now, and SP management is vital from this point on, there are just certain additional slash strikes and methods and techniques of approach of each screen that you realistically cannot do unless you have that dispenser to be able to keep your SP pumping. So it is in of itself will save time from this point on as we run into the Dragon Shrine here, and pretty much this is where everything is going to get powered up. So chapter 4 pushed the limits and started to test your skills. Chapter 7 really kicks you in the back just to get you prepared for what remains, but it at least gives you all of this. There's a bunch of things, but just to save time, the double jump, that's all you want. There are other tools that will help. You can charge up like your shuriken to throw an explosive kunai, for example. And there is a couple of other instances where those tools will come into play briefly, which does help save time. But the double jump is the vital part of this transition, or this transaction. Sorry, words are hard. Please forgive me.
Hey, no, there was a couple screen transitions there. It worked for me. I was okay with it.
Oh, cool. Well, forget I said anything. Forget I apologise then. Screw it. We're good.
We see Big K's getting trolled, unfortunately, by these exploding acid skulls.
Yeah, I guess it can get a bit hectic at times. So, before we go here, an advantage on that double jump as well, in conjunction with what you have. Upon successfully ramming through or destroying an enemy or sort of crate or something in the air with the dash, it also replenishes your double jump. So as long as you've got the chain of utensils to go through, you could dash indefinitely in the air, essentially.
And even SP dispenser aside, it's also worth noting that if you do dash slash through an enemy with SP, you do get that 1 SP automatically restored. The only edge case is like if you run off the screen too quickly and don't have time to collect it, well, that's unfortunately your loss. But in all other cases, like it drops SP and it actually homes to your character and it actually just goes right to them to collect for free.
Indeed. On that front, so we got our third cyber section. To kind of failed to touch upon the second cyber section, which we can do as well now, as TheBigK going into the second section, which you need to access to get to the dragon. Both relatively similar in its design in a way. Pretty much just plow through, break the block so you can make it to the core, take out all the little things that are in your way, destroy the 4 switches in TheBigK's case, 3 in Messiah's case, and then take out the core itself. And both of them unlock their own respective things. For TheBigK, it gives him the access to the Dragon Shrine to be able to get his upgrades. And in Messiah's case, gets him the SP dispenser. Well, the SP dispenser gets him the bike. Wow, I'm more tight than I thought. So we now have a little bit of an auto scroller going here. So happy days.
I mean, Exo is kind of like the Essence dispenser if you think about it. If you have the SP dispenser, so it's like its own special thing. It's worth noting that should our players be able to carry the SP dispenser here, a couple nuances to these details, but it will dispense Essence during Exo 2 phase, which you'll be seeing shortly. During this bike phase, it's apparently specific that you have to be missing SP for the SP dispenser to give you money. That's just how it works, but it's really a good opportunity to kind of pad your essence count for your end game, whether you're just low to begin with, whether that's a strat that you then bank on and are comfortable with. It's a great thing to have regardless. And then of course you then get the benefit of having the SP dispenser after the fact.
Exactly that. And I mean, I think that works. I think it's for both sections. You need to have SP or not have a full SP meter when you enter the segment in order for it to drop essence. Because I got confused as hell. I got confused a lot when I got to like XO2 and I had the dispenser, but it just wasn't giving me money. And I could never figure it out until I was watching a couple of other runners through the last couple of days, and they actually explained like you need to drop. If you drop the SP, then the dispenser's trying to give you something, and such it will give you the money instead because you don't need SP during XO sections. So I'm glad the information's out there. So now at least I have an understanding of how it works now. But yeah, you could essentially just get all the essence you'll ever need from this point on if you happen to have the dispenser.
And here we see the turtle shell airbag.
Heroes in a half shell. Oh, you could tell I'm an 80s boy. Yeah, so cutting through here. I'm going to have a wild guess to say on Messiah's side, we're probably going to see for one of the very few glitches that are in this game. As long as you've got an enemy overlapping a gate, boom, you can use them and dash through and cut through the gate.
I love how consistent that one is. Like, just the swing of the enemy and where it ends up tends to be very, very consistent. Those two enemies always follow you over if you don't destroy them. So it's basically just stand there, jump to dodge it, and then when it turns around to try and get you, it just hangs kind of over that gate in that nice, perfect position. It's just very, very clean.
Very good. Wow. I had a moment there. That is very true indeed, and yeah, being able to manipulate the enemies in such a way. Messiah has been using the technique for some time now, so he's pretty much got it down to an exact science. So he knows exactly where it's going to be, at what point, bang, in he goes as he's got the mid-stage of Chapter 8 with Exo's little boss here. So with this fight, pretty much as long as you move to the same parts of each platform respectively, it's always going to fall in the same suit and it's always going to spawn in the same position. Just pump it for the lead and you'll be good.
Yeah, the only fight that we do with the mech, so it's kind of underwhelming. You just pump shots into it from point blank range, and it's over so quickly. And then, of course, we don't get the opportunity to really do any more destructive goodness once we reach the end of this road. Those of you who have seen the game obviously know what we're talking about, and those of you that haven't, well, you're going to be enlightened in a short moment.
In the meantime, hype is ready because EXO is covering the entire stream, and we love it. Go EXO, hug the boss, hug the camera. There. Wow, I've got to sleep more before I do commentary, or at least learn my own language, one or the other.
I think the saddest part is like this even positions it like it's a boss fight. Like there's a save point beforehand, and it's like, oh, something's gonna happen. You see the boss bar filled, and then it's just like, nah.
Yeah, I was always curious about that.
I wonder if they intended to have a boss fight in here, and maybe just like time limitations, they decided they couldn't, and they had to cut it or something. But
either that, or it would probably just be like fight. You just fire at him like for about 2 seconds. He probably just dies from that. So it probably wasn't worth it. Who knows? But nah, it's all right. It does kind of give you the impression that you've got a bit of a battle, like a little like boss battle there with Operator again. But I can understand it not being there. Yeah, so Messiah's going to go crazy here. So usually runners would take a save and exit or try and get their health replenished because after the segment with XO2, you go straight to 1 health, and this is one of the more infamous death loops of the run. So pretty much you have to get through here without taking a hit. It's not an impossible task. It can be done, but it can be a pain. And whoa, hello.
Shot the platform. I thought for a moment that he was gonna like
Messy
do some shenanigans with it.
Hello. Doesn't even trigger the security. Wow. Usually when they don't trigger the security, they're usually taking their time in a number of spots just to play the safe game. Missy has got the moves, it seems, to even be able to get through it. I mean, it won't be the fastest approach to it, but that was very fast for not triggering the security, for damn sure. Well,
the end of that
me off guard.
screen, it's so convoluted. You get to the end of that screen, the saw catches up with you, the dude shoots the little like homing shot at you, you've got like 5 purple things coming out of right field trying to hit you. You try and go through the grate, and there's like the little caterpillar enemy there just to ruin your day should you make it that far. It's a mess of a room, so to see it done like that, and with the 1 health going in was just like very, very nice.
Very true. Chapter 8 is not quite done yet for Messiah, just having to deal with these final segments, whilst BigK dealing with the old mecha ship. Oh, everything is mecha in my mind, apparently. And gets through no problem, so continue on with XO2 on BigK side. He has fallen a bit behind, but he has still maintained a good bit of pace. As I say, the run is not over till it's over. Gets an explosive shuriken there as an example of that to be able to destroy a couple of things there on Messiah's side. BigK just wiping the field out, taking a little bit of intentional damage there just to keep forward momentum going. His health position is still in a good spot. So both runners are executing well as we're going to be approaching Chapter 9 soon for Messiah. Chapter 9, one of the shorter ones, certainly not one of the easier ones. Probably it's the same thing I've said in every race now, because this run still likes to kick your teeth in a little bit when you get to the later stages. Managed to keep the SP dispenser there as well, so he's going to be able to take advantage of that for a bit, and probably be able to throw in a couple of extra dashes and different movement techniques for a bit of speed, not having to worry about his his SP position as much. Opting to still take this a little easier, just to be fair, that's more of a general aspect, because you want to keep the certain cycle with the orbs that are floating around the platforms, otherwise they can get in your way and become an absolute nightmare.
Woohoo! Took a little dip in the pool there next to the mine. Mine didn't activate, thankfully. And is going underneath to dodge these shots, but yeah, playing it conservative here for the sake of keeping this SP dispenser as long as possible is going to pay off in the long run.
Very true indeed. Let's say keep it free because saves have a little bit of essence in the next chapter. Because as I usually pick up SP dispenser at the beginning of chapter 10, or they'll opt to just go with what they got and then get SP replenished at the next checkpoint. Of course, and again, another runner's choice and preference. In the meantime, Big K going through the Deathloop room himself now. Hopefully not Deathlooping. And I realise I may have cursed the man. Please don't make me curse you.
Oh. Okay, deflected the shot. That's
You got there. Okay, thank you. As soon as I said, I was like, oh crap, what have I done? So he looked like it may have had to give him a little bit of trouble at the end there, but he expertly played it to keep himself alive. More importancy on that front. So well executed, well played on Big K's front and side as the boat is in play. Boat doesn't exist. I'm just going to ignore that. I hate the boat, but
I'm trying to remember the last time I even saw an SP dispenser well on the boat section. Well, never mind.
Timing. Whoops.
I have it. Whether it's good or not, I have it.
Well, funnily enough, timing is a key part of speedrunning, so you're in the right field. So the boat is another auto-scroller. There's like sort of beaming in the background, these stars. I see it as sort of a throwback to the Shinobi games on the Mega Drive / Genesis. And that just pretty much gives you an indicator of when they're coming in and what direction they're coming in. But the enemy pattern in here is basically, it's exactly the same every time you enter. But the key random factor here is the speed of the boat. So when you get to this point, in this case, Messiah got quick boat. So he got some good RNG there. It could be either quick or it could be long. And the difference is roughly 10 seconds, give or take. So the game could just cost you time just because.
I think the kicker here is I may have cursed him.
Factors.
But you just got a new SP dispenser anywhere, so it actually meant nothing.
Yeah, not a surprise there. It's quite common for several runners to pick up the SP dispenser at this point. Because it's a very valuable thing to have in Chapter 10. Going forward, as we take on the Combinatron. And, well, we did take on Combinatron. He did. Pretty much the key on that fight, you just want to manipulate his health in such a way that you don't deal too much straight away. But enough to keep a good pace so you can just make mincemeat of him. Because if you end up dealing too much damage too quick, or you let him progress too far in the fight when he's at low health, he likes to heal. And once he heals, it becomes quite a hassle to recover. Yeah, starting to plow into Chapter 10. As well as Chapter 9, respectively, for Big K side.
Oh.
And as I say, the SP dispenser is very valuable for Chapter 10. Oh, wow.
Big K played some Minesweeper and unfortunately lost.
Yeah, they did not play pretty for him, unfortunately. The enemies decided to make their fun day, I guess. I don't know. But it is what it is. It's Cyber Shadow in a nutshell. Things just happen, and death is inevitable in most run cases. Right, to be fair, with that, given the time, I'm going to have to bow out of commentary for now. I've got to get myself ready for work, so my apologies on that, Strizer. I will leave you with it, and have a good rest of the run, everyone.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for contributing. Appreciate it, and hope your day goes well.
This work, it's not going to be good.
Hope it goes quickly.
But thank you. Give away, man. Have a good one.
Alrighty, so both of our runners were coming into the end avenue here. Yeah, this is basically where runs generally come to die, unfortunately. If you've been fortunate enough to make it this far, you're seeing those nice, juicy gold and green splits. This is where it can ruin your day. We're going to see how the Spider Rail fight goes. So we saw some damage for the Spider Rail fight right there at the start with the charged Rising Fire. While the boss was spawning. Gets the early onion rings. Nice. So the idea is basically if you can damage that boss enough prior to the fight and then continue to deal damage, you can change the script a little bit. Normally Spider Rail follows a certain script in order of attacks. And if you do that extra damage, it basically puts you in a place where it does we call it the onion ring attack. It basically throws out the bunch of rings that you can then parry right back in its face. Big K also on a boat. You see it going through the climb here. So the infamous climb, we've discussed it in previous races, and we'll continue to basically discuss it in all races going forward pretty much. You can pick your poison on how you want to do this, but the purple enemies are out to ruin your day, and the first section is the worst. So probably breathing a sigh of relief. Might be close. PB'd this morning with a 57-13, I believe it was. So just under 3 minutes to finish things off. See if we can witness a race PB. Regardless, you know, a sub-hour in a race is just phenomenal. Very, very, very nice apparator fight. There's a couple different ways that you can do that fight, and I like the use of the Rising Fire there to catch on the back jump. Alright, so Progen first phase, the Rising Fire is used from that spot to hit with all the projectiles, and then we see literal use of the parry mechanic there. Big K through the Combinatron fight. And Progen Phase 2. Everything's looking comfy, lots of health. C's got a really unique way of doing this, and I think it's a really nice way of doing this fight. You can actually reach Progen 2 as long as you have SP when you do a down stab like that. And it does a lot of damage. So you've seen a lot of runners that'll kind of like pogo off the left or right. I don't even know what you want to call it. The three things that we destroy. Ouch, I have no idea. But yeah, that's a really neat strat. Runners take note of that. And utilize your down stab. That's going to be a really great finish. And yeah, this is going to be close. I'm not going to say the words that could potentially ruin that. But yeah, it's going to be really close. We've got the end cutscene. We've got a few switches to hit on the way down. I'm not saying it. I am not saying it. Not going to be that guy. We can talk about the switches later. Alright, K1 coming through the end of Chapter 10. Very nice down stab to accelerate into the end section. Unfortunately, not going to be a PB by a very small amount. Or maybe? I'm pretty sure you just... No, okay. I was like 2 seconds from the PB earlier today. But huge GG's. Alright, we don't have a race time official finish time yet. It's Messiah's first time using race time, trying to explain the process and ensure that they go ahead and finish here. Obviously we saw the finish, so it's not something we're going to worry about. So we have Big K1 finishing up the spider rail fight. Big K going into the climb. What is Big K's PB at the moment? Let me take a peek for everybody. As you're deceiving me, where Big K1's PB right now is a 101.02. So, K1 on to Pro Gen 2. Little bit of swag run for everybody. All right, final descent. Yeah, both runners very, very close to their respective PBs. Huge congrats to both. Still not gonna say it. We can say it after Big K is finished. Still not gonna say it. A little bit of a run off to the side for everybody. Alright. Yeah, Big K can be very careful in this section. Excellent. Sweet. Big congrats to both. Very, very, very solid race and performance by both. I'll see if we can get Big K in here. All right, and to clarify what was going on there with the final section, there is our runners could have basically soft locked had they hit the ending switches, two of them at the exact same time. So I wasn't going to say it prior to anyone finishing because I didn't want to jinx either of you. Congrats, Big K, on your finish. That was really close to your PB time by the looks of things. How do you feel about that race?
Pretty good. I it's usually if I have deaths, it's usually like that first half. I feel a lot better in the second half, and really only the if I didn't die in before Mecha Dragon, it would have been a lot better. That was kind of the one time loss that costed me everything, but other than that, I felt good about it.
Awesome.
It looked decently close from what I could tell.
Yeah, you guys were really close right out of the gates, and then, like you mentioned, there was the unfortunate death there early on. But you had some really solid moments. Is there anything that you kind of felt really good about? Is there anything that you felt, this fight went well, or this section was really good compared to usual?
Nothing particularly went really well, but I had so many close calls in the second half, where I almost died more. A few parts where I fell into water in like the docks and almost died to bombs, but yeah, it was a.
I may have made a Minecraft joke when that happened. I saw you take the slight dip, and then it didn't move and activate, so it was close.
Yeah, I had right at the end, and I was like, "Oh no!"
So yeah, let me pull up the tournament results here.
Did Meshia get a PB?
It was within 2 seconds. So Messiah got a PB just before the race with a 57:13, and then race on my end when they finished was a 57:12. I'd have to double check their splits as well, but it was really close. If they didn't PB just before the race, it would have been a PB.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So let's see. We're gonna advance our brackets here. This is going to put you facing Eric's in the second chance situation. So both of you will be fighting to continue on the tournament life. And Messiah is going to be going on to face Kyle Berry, who has turned around and been an unexpected beast in a very short amount of time. But any final words before we part ways for the day?
Not too much. GG Messi. Congrats on the great runs. Looking forward to the next races. I know there's some more tomorrow, and yeah, it's going to be a good week.
Yeah, we've got some tomorrow. We've got some Saturday. Be sure to follow the runners as well. I've provided the links for everyone there in chat. And thanks for supporting the tournament. Thanks everyone for coming out and helping out. And we will see you guys tomorrow.